Yeah, so Linda's back. So spring is a time when things begin to come out of dormancy and begin to manifest. And that's beautiful. And I was very conscious today that not only are these beautiful flowers and leaves emerging, but also a lot of weeds. And I was doing excisions of big clusters of quackgrass that had found its way into our garden. Big ones like this, big clumps. So that also emerges. And so it's a time for deciding what you want to encourage and what you would like to remove. And so it seemed like this was a good time to talk about what's emerging for you this spring, and what of that are you really welcoming, and what of that do you want to regard with perhaps some reserve, or maybe even thoughts of how to send it on its way elsewhere. So yeah, so anybody who has a comment or a question about, or something you would like to share about what's emerging for you, and how you feel about that. Yeah, Tia.
Oh, beautiful to see you, Rudyji. I have a question because it's a time of such chaos. And I was thinking about you, and I thought, oh, I wanted to ask Rudyji, what tantric practices do you recommend to enhance the healing aspects of the feminine and the healing aspects of the masculine?
Yeah. What tantric practices are you asking?
Anything would help that.
Yeah. Well, Tantra is said to be the spiritual path of choice during the Kali Yuga. And the Kali Yuga means the dark age, when things are kind of falling apart. And I think we merit that descriptor at this point, because it seems like a lot of things that we really haven't wanted to know about are becoming obvious. And a lot of things that we had relied on are sort of disassembling and maybe needing to be reconfigured. So, so this is kind of par for the course during a Kali Yuga. So Tantra is actually suited as a spiritual path for that kind of situation, because it actually, Tantra doesn't really rely on having stability and predictability and institutions that are well established and constructive. Those are all wonderful things, but Tantra doesn't rely on that for its effectiveness. It operates despite that, or even uses that uses the turmoil, uses the chaos to help transform what's there. So most of the practices of Tantra are well suited to this time. And a few things that come to mind are certainly breath work. Actually, the breath being sort of at the center of our being in terms of stability. So if you really want to forget about stability out there, maybe it's not happening, but establishing stability in here, then your go-to practice is attending to the breath, meaning being aware of the breath. And it's so fascinating, to ask people. I can ask you all, how many people have actually observed with care and focus an entire respiratory cycle, that is inhalation and exhalation, watching how it moves through your body and what ripples out from it. I won't ask you to raise your hand, but how many people have done that? Usually it's not very many. So this very act of bringing the breath into awareness is a revolutionary act. Because what it does is it immerses oneself into the what we call the magic structure of consciousness. One of the aspects of our being that we keep unconscious, we don't acknowledge, we don't look at, we don't bring into constant awareness. So then the breath has to function automatically or fall back on automatic pilot, which it's okay, it can do that. But then the pattern of the breath, exactly how you breathe, is shaping how you think and feel all the time. So if you're not conscious of it, you're repeating old patterns. And because the breath is on automatic pilot, so it keeps doing the same old thing. And that is leading you to react and perceive in the same old way. So bringing attention to the breath and actually watching how it's functioning and allowing it to shift into other patterns and experimenting with the breath that's why I say it's revolutionary, because it changes your whole way of being. And that's something that is very helpful in a time of chaos, to be aware of that, so that we don't have to be always focused on what's the crazy things that are going on out there. There are plenty of them, but we can be focused on what are the crazy things that are going on in here, because I can change that. I can watch my breath and I can begin to play with other ways of breathing and other parts of my body expanding when I inhale, and parts that aren't getting energy, I can allow that energy to reach those parts. And all of this changes how I function. It changes which chakras become active, and it changes how it really is transformative. So a breath awareness, I would put right at the top of the list of tantric techniques that are crucial and extremely valuable. It seems so trivial. People think, just watch my breath. What is that? Like staring at your navel or something? I mean, what's the point? Well, the point is that, this flow of the breath is actually the flow of life energy, and how it flows and where it's flowing and at what rate and whether it's inhibited and whether it's blocked is having incredible impacts on how you live and how you think and how you feel, and how you can how you can actually be in touch with your spirituality and go down your spiritual path, you know, and without the breath awareness, it's difficult to do that. Yeah.
And if someone like me and many of the people here have a daily practice of observing the breath and observing the breath, you know, all the time as much as possible, what would be some things that would enhance the healing aspects of the feminine and the healing aspects of the masculine, like kind of bringing together things, you know, calming, grounding things, because these times are very chaotic.
Yeah.
Especially the healing aspects of the feminine. I was thinking the feminine especially.
Yeah, well, I think what you encounter when you start really attending to the breath is that you have two nostrils. And the right nostril activates the left brain and brings the masculine side of yourself out into activity. And vice versa. When you're breathing through the left nostril, you're activating the right hemisphere, and that activates the feminine. So, you know, I think that there are several ways to approach this. One is to become more aware of who you are when you're breathing through your right nostril, and who you are when you're breathing through your left nostril. And that is tricky to do, because in the state of consciousness that most of us have been brought up in and trained to live in, we don't remember. Well, first of all, we don't notice which nostril we're breathing through. But when we do, we don't remember who we were a few moments ago when we were breathing through the other nostrils. So there's this split. There's this kind of disconnect between the masculine and feminine. So a lot of healing possibilities from the masculine and the feminine come from their being more aware of each other. You're being aware that you have both, and you're being aware of both at the same time. And this is a trick, because mostly we don't do that. We have come to live in this world of division. We're this, now we're this. And we don't forget, we don't remember the other one. So it's like a schizophrenia, a normal schizophrenia, normal in the sense that it's been normalized because everybody's doing it, but not normal in the sense that it's helpful. In fact, it's a deep schism in our being. And that's why we so fiercely identify with our anatomical gender, and then sort of can deny that we have a contrasexual part, you know, the other gender, because we keep that split. So to be able to sit in meditation, it's said that you should open the central channel, that is sushumna. Sushumna is what happens when you're breathing through both nostrils equally. And at that moment, you have the possibility of being aware of both sides at the same time. And that's why you're set up then for meditation, because meditation needs to have that larger awareness, not this and then this and then this and then this. It needs to be aware of it all together. That's the integrating aspect of the higher consciousness. So you know, watching the breath and being aware of the breath, and then discovering what it's like to breathe through both nostrils equally, and observe what it feels like to be in that state, consciously doing that, because that is a, quote, higher state of consciousness, a more integrated state of consciousness. And it's actually what happens when we focus on this point between the eyebrows. That's where the nadis come together. and don't go any further separately. When I say that, for those who aren't familiar with the yogic iconography, that they're pictured as like snakes going up like this, and then they come together here. This is where the serpents and the staff of the caduceus, for instance, in healing, comes from this, because the seer, the teacher, the healer has worked with that and come to this point where he can see both, which is why a lot of the healers and teachers and spiritual people in indigenous cultures are, they're two-spirited. They're aware of their masculine and feminine whole both. And so this is where that holding both comes into play, is when we open the chakra. Or you could say it the other way. We open the chakra when those two that comes into play, that awareness of both. So all of this is stuff that can happen during meditation around the breath. And it's considered in the Yoga Sutras as sort of preliminary step. But you know how we are in the West, we want to skip the preliminaries and go to the big stuff, the great stuff, the important stuff. We don't have time for all that preparation. So we miss it, we don't get it. And therefore we're kind of hanging out there unmoored, and our attempts at meditation don't work so well. So yeah, in this Kali Yuga especially, it's a good time to turn your attention to the breath, and establish that practice of being aware. This is why people do this thing, the alternate nostril breathing. It's trying to get a sense of, okay, breathe through this nostril a while and see what that feels like. Now breathe through this nostril a while, see what that feels like. But then once you really can feel the difference, then can you bring the attention to this point between the nostrils, and then inhale through a central channel. Like, no, the air does not go through your spinal cord, but the energy goes through your spinal cord that is stirred up by the breath. And when you are focused and equally aware of him and her, and you're not him and you're not her, but you're this oneness, this more integrated self, then yes, you can feel the energy moving through a central channel, which is called Sushumna. And that is extremely critical right now. I mean, I would go so far as to say that that's why we see so much stuff around gender, and that's why we see so many issues around, who's people being transsexual and back and forth, and everyone's trying to come to grips with this two-ness and how it can become a oneness, and different ways of struggling with it and grappling with it and trying to find our way through that transformation. So, there are a lot more things about Tantra that are really helpful in the Kali Yuga, but I want to put this one right up front because I think it's so present and overlooked and powerful and valuable.
Thank you, Rudyji.
Yeah. I hope that kind of long, involved answer doesn't discourage other people from asking questions. I mean, yes, maybe that's more than you wanted to hear, but anyway, I think it's very fascinating, actually. Yeah, so who else has a thought about what's emerging right now for you, outside, inside? And how you want to deal with it. And Linda, yes, please.
So I've been, what's emerging for me is a lot of work with thinking about my biome, my virome, my many celled organisms that feed me, even though I don't know that much about them, and people tell me to kill them all and stuff like that.
Right.
So I started wondering, so as I'm kind of working with this, I'm doing a lot of work with Zach Bush and his organization, and it started occurring to me that I'm wondering if, I don't know, it's like, okay, so this is going on here, like, oh, it's not the good guys and the bad guys. It's not the duality from the mental, deficient mental.
Right.
And I'm seeing that, and then I'm thinking, okay, in our social networks, it's not Black Lives Matter or White Lives Matter. Guess what? All lives matter. So again, moving from the duality of, oh, if Black Lives Matter, then I don't want to say that, because then I'm not saying White Lives Matter and all that craziness that gets going. So moving into the integral is that all life matters. And then I look at these two things and I'm wondering if part of the microbiome awareness, waking up, is kind of an integral process. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, because we have been taught and raised to see the world in terms of not just duality, but also one half of that duality is good and the other half is bad. And of course, we're the good half. And so whoever we are, and the bad half is out there and it's trying to kill us. I mean, we know that. We know it's after us. It's somewhere out there trying to attack us, and it's gotten into our bodies too. And so there are bacteria in our bodies that are trying to kill us, and there are protozoa. We actually call them. What's the term we use? I've already forgotten. But we have a negative way of thinking about. They're parasites. That's right. They're parasites. They're not collaborators, they're parasites. And, we really need to get rid of them. And so, as you say, we're taught and raised to think that all these microbes, the more of them we can kill, the better. But actually, as many of you've heard me rant about this before, that those microbes are actually doing metabolic work that our cells are incapable of doing, but that is essential to our life. And so by killing them, we're actually weakening ourselves to the point that eventually we are indirectly and unknowingly committing suicide. And so this is a huge awareness, but it's back to nature. Like nature means us and the network that we are a part of, that is us. The network is us. And so all those microbes are not this other thing. They are part and parcel of what we are part and parcel of. And we require them for life. And that's very hard for us to understand, because that's not the way we were taught. And so anytime it's the bad guys are out there and we're the good guys, then you should go, red light should go off, ding, no, that's probably not right. Sounds like paranoia to me. And we need to get over that. It's difficult, but this is the duality, the right, the left, which it's, men are superior, no, women are superior, no, oh, that's the right and the left and the good and the bad. And, I'm one of those and the other one's out there. And of course the other one's not very good. So I'm masculine, so she's feminine. So, I can't deal with them. And so this is all the same story of the splits, all these splits, and the need for integration, the need for healing the splits, healing this, you split apart. Well, you got to put the pieces back together. So bringing the split apart pieces back together is called healing. And healing is, as you've heard me say many times, heal, holy, health, These all come from the same root, and they're all about the same thing. That if we're going to heal ourselves, that's the only way we become healthy. And the only way we can become healed and healthy is to be whole and not split apart. And that seems like a simple thing, but we've made it really complicated.
So you can see a parallel with this.
Oh,
then.
absolutely. It's not a
Okay.
parallel.
Okay.
These are, it's not this thing and this thing that are similar. It's all the same thing.
Got
It's
it.
the same issue. It is the same issue expressed in different ways, but it's the same thing. It's the duality, the split. And so that's why, the body is designed to bring that into focus. Like, okay, you got a right nostril and a left nostril. Why not just one nostril? I mean, come on, this is a waste, right? Why would we have to? Well, because at this level of our functioning, we are very split. But that's why we need to move our consciousness from here up to here, where the split is brought together. So there's a right nadi and a left nadi until you get here. Then it's just one straight passageway up to the crown chakra and self-realization or oneness or knowing that everything is one. Not just I'm one, but I and everything are one functioning entity that is very complex and interdependent and beautiful and fantastic and amazing. But we are still down here in the split apart mindset. And then meditation is designed to open Sushumna and concentrate here. So you kind of bootstrap yourself up to a oneness awareness. And you can do that, I mean, this is a technique. This is a very ancient technique and well proven. And it takes a little focus and concentration, and it takes some persistence. But yes, if I bring my attention here, it means I just focus on this point. Then gradually I begin to move into the awareness that is centered here. Awareness of the oneness, not this, and then this, and then this, and then this. That happens below here, down here, and here, and here, all through here, all these other chakras. Even the heart chakra, which we revere the heart chakra, but the heart chakra is about, I love you, but you're separate. And I'm separate from you, but I love you. Not that, oh, we're all just the same thing. So there's still duality here. And there are experiences that go with each of these chakras that we need to go through and experience to get it. And then we're ready to go to the next, and then the next. And then once we get here, we're like, oh, okay, now we're getting somewhere. That we're stepping out of duality and we get into unity. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I think
Thank you.
it does to me. I want it to make sense to you. I'm trying to say it in a way that makes sense. But it's hard because we aren't taught to think that way. So that sounds like really woo-woo, right? Okay, what are you talking about? That's really weird stuff. And it is by our standards of how we were raised and how the world thinks. But how we were raised and how the world thinks has gotten us into a lot of trouble. And now we need help. And we need help to step out of that trouble. It's starting to get kind of edgy here, everything falling apart out there. So great. Good questions. Linda, any more follow up on that? Okay. So for people who aren't aware of the lingo, Linda was talking about the deficient mental and then the integral. And these are terms for structures of consciousness, or they're called, and we're referring here to the words that were coined by a writer named Jean Gebser, who writes about consciousness, wrote about consciousness. He's no longer living, and he talked about the deficient mental, the mental being our intellect and our way of thinking logically, which we sort of claim to be using in our day-to-day life. And we're using the intellect, but actually things have gotten messy, and now we aren't really using the intellect. We're using sort of an imitation intellect, meaning the mental process has become deficient instead of efficient. It's not really functioning the way it can. It's kind of gotten messy and disturbed and corrupted. So people say things that sound logical, but they really aren't if you look at it carefully. And so that's what we call the deficient mental. And if we can move from the deficient mental, the only direction to go is up here. And then we get to the integral. The integral means the awareness, the constant and total awareness that everything is one, and that it's all functioning as one unit. And that's what we call the Unitary Consciousness, or enlightenment, or all kinds of names with cosmic consciousness. People have had over the ages for that. So every spiritual tradition is really talking about that basically. The details vary from culture to culture, so we have different religions, but the spiritual essence of all the religions is really quite similar, almost really the same. And this is why all great spiritual teachers can gather and talk with each other. And, they're just saying the same thing in different languages, different terms, cultural terms. But yeah, so we can talk about the consciousness, the structure, the way the consciousness is structured. And there are different structures of consciousness that we can use, and that we do tend to move into and out of during our day and during our lives. And so bringing those into awareness is helpful for us in finding our way through the external chaos and finding our way through and along our spiritual path. Yes.
Rudyji.
Oh, okay. Arabella, and then somebody else raised his hand, but I can't see your name.
I can wait.
Okay.
Arabella can go first. I'll wait.
Okay. Arabella, you go first.
I just wanted to make an observation that I think part of the challenge in discussing integral consciousness is that we're discussing it using language with which we're comfortable, which is language essentially of the deficient mental.
Right.
And consequently, it's really hard to communicate in words
Right.
those really beautiful structures of consciousness.
Yes, that is an ever-present problem and very frustrating. And part of that is that we are speaking English. And English is a relatively recent language and grew up in the time, during a time it has developed in a time that is very materialistic. Yeah. So it's not very good at conveying multi-leveled things. It speaks very directly to what you can see and touch and feel, and that doesn't carry the connotation that it's happening on other levels too. And so some of the languages that are more ancient, that were developed for the purpose of encompassing many levels simultaneously, like Sanskrit, are much better at communicating the different levels simultaneously. So, but we are all, English is the language of the day because materialism is the way of thinking of this era. And so we kind of, our language is keeping us stuck there to some extent, but we're learning ways to kind of work around that. And that's why we talk about different structures of consciousness and so forth, trying to extricate ourselves from the limitations of modern languages.
Yes, since January, I have replunged into Sanskrit again. And I think that's brought to my awareness the limitations of English as our communication language, because of course, as you know, Sanskrit is the way the whole language evolves is extraordinarily tantric, about incorporating the feminine, and
Yes.
and it's just really inspiring me.
Yes, that's why it's called a Sandhya Bhasha, a purified language, you know, and because it was developed for that purpose, and it really is beautifully effective. So thank you for that comment. And I can't see your name because you're in the corner and your name is cut off, Christopher.
Christopher.
Oh, Christopher, great.
I'm calling in from Minneapolis.
Good.
My question is related to the unified consciousness or the unity consciousness.
Yes.
The collective field or the collective consciousness. I mean, there's different words for it. I'm very empathetic. And so when I open myself up to the unity consciousness, I get wrapped up in emotional drama that's not mine. I get involved in thoughts that are not mine.
Mm-hmm.
And being empathetic and being, you know, having the male mind, it's like I want to figure it out. I want to, you know, cleanse or work with it in such a way that I can be most useful in the situation. But I often get myself all stuck up in this is too emotionally overwhelming to me, or it triggers some of my trauma or any of that. So I guess my question is, for me to operate in unity consciousness, how do I do it without getting, you know, stuck in thoughts and emotions that don't, you know, relate to me or something? I'm not really clear on my question, but do you understand what I mean?
No, I understand, and that's an excellent question. And we all have to deal with that. And this is why we're here on planet Earth. You know, planet Earth is kind of a remedial course. You know, we come to become aware of those emotional things and work, we say, quote, work through them so that we get to a point where we can say, oh yeah, there comes that emotion, but you know, I'm not going to let it distract me, and I'm going to go ahead with what I'm doing. So we are ill prepared, but busily preparing for that integral consciousness. And a lot of our work and things that people are coming up with and creative ways of learning how to deal with emotions and how to, you know, like family constellation work and all kinds of different techniques that are being developed to help us go back and understand the roots of those things and let them go and be able to be free to move forward without being troubled by all of that. And that's our own inner work, and everybody has to do his own, her own inner work. Nobody can do that for you. You know, you can't send it off and have it done in return, send it back without that. No, you can't do that. So that's all of us. We all have to do that. And it's actually, once you get into it and get past your humiliation of being an imperfect human being, then it becomes quite intriguing to discover all these strange hangups that we have internally and plan your way through them. And it's a life's work. That's what life is for. We do that. And we can have a good time while we're doing it if we get over the fact that it's the way it is. This is what you do here on planet Earth. Yeah, okay, good, let's do it. And have fun while we're doing it.
I participated in that family constellation therapy, and that was so insightful. Just let somebody else kind of be the voice of my family.
Right.
And then find out a way to, solve or resolve some of that tension.
Very powerful, very powerful. And there are so many other techniques. So we are fortunate. I mean, 50 years ago, all that wasn't available. So people sort of stumbled through their lives the best way they could. And, we look back and say, oh, my parents, what were they thinking? Well, they hadn't been offered all of those possibilities. And they were just trying to, do what it looked like you were supposed to do. And so we're fortunate to have what we have now.
So really, really what I'm hearing is that I just get to do the work.
Yeah.
And not be so upset to the fact that I'm, feeling this or processing this, but.
Oh, right. That's not a defect or a condemnation, or it's just like, oh yeah, this is what we do. We're human. This is what we do. We explore all of that and understand that and go through an emotional thing, and then we release it, and then we feel freer, and then we go, oh yeah, I want more of that. That's what we do.
I had an earlier spiritual teacher that worked with me, and he said, the reward of work is more work.
That's true. And there is a progression that happens. You can feel like there's a movement, and you can feel what you can feel is increasing degrees of freedom. And that's such a joy. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. So, okay, we have a few more minutes if anybody else wants to say something. Yes. Ruvain. Ruvain.
Hey, Swami Ravi.
Hi.
Hey, everybody. Happy spring. Spring is sprung.
Yes, right.
So Swami Ravi, you mentioned something earlier about parasitism, and it catapulted me back to AP biology, where I was remembering the different divisions of symbiotic relationships. You have parasitism, mutualism, and commensalism. Of course, parasitism being the worst of those symbiotic relationships, where one party benefits and the other party basically dies, or at some point becomes deficient.
Right.
And then you have commensalism, where one party benefits and the other party is left fairly neutral. And then mutualism, where both parties benefit. And somehow it just triggered these thoughts about interpersonal relationships and relationships in our lives, and which ones are mutualistic, which ones are commensalistic, and which ones are parasitic, God forbid. And go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yes, that's fascinating. Yes. And so what's happening as we learn more is we're discovering, well, very seldom is it a case of parasitism, and very seldom even the commensalism. Actually, every part is helping every other part. And that I say that talking about the protozoa, Giardia is a protozoa that we consider a parasite. And so some of you may have heard me say that my friend in Mexico, Susana, who Linda knows and very well knows, a lot of people know, she's lived in Mexico almost all of her life. And she said, she was here at Earth Haven, she said, Giardia, what's wrong with Giardia? And I said, well, she said, Giardia is good for you. I said, what? And she said, people come to Mexico to get Giardia so that they can get over autoimmune diseases. And I was like, wow. And that was before I knew what I knew now, listening to Zach Bush. So actually, there's a little parasite, quote unquote, a little protozoa that lives in the corner of our eye. And without that, the tear duct doesn't work. So, you know, we have all of these creatures that we think are separate and dangerous that actually are really part of who we are. I mean, and so we vilify them, and then we try to take medications, you know, to kill them, because we go, well, that shouldn't be in there. And then we get more diseases, and then we can't understand why that happens. Why do I take more and more antibiotics and I get sicker and sicker? Well, yeah, because you're killing off all the workers in this factory, and the factory can't run anymore. So this is a big paradigm change, and you know we need to embrace it, because the research is there now, and now we know this is true. But the habits and the old established ways of doing things sort of have their own momentum, and we keep thinking that, well, mine reverts to that, you know. So you have to stop and check yourself and go, oh, wait a minute, no, I don't really have to wash my hands 5 times. Actually, maybe I should just suck my thumb, because there's probably some wonderful microbes there that I've been needing. You know, we've gotten so far that we have our intestinal biome has something like, what, 25 species of bacteria or something. It should be 25,000. And so what they're doing to treat people with a lot of many disorders, not just intestinal disorders, is fecal implants. So, you know, if you have a good microbiome, you can sell your feces and on the market and make a lot of money. And they inject them into people who have managed to kill off most of their bacteria. So this is a very strange moment of what's going on in the world. Yeah.
That gives me a really fascinating new perspective on symbiotic relationships. Thank you. I just wanted to end with one question to you, because you started tonight's meeting with our thoughts about spring. And I know for me, spring is very much about rebirth and renewal. And I thought maybe as the call's ending, especially coming out of this difficult period we've been in, if you have any special thoughts, blessings, musings on rebirth and renewal for spring.
Oh, yes, yes. Thank you. Yes, that's what we need, right? Rebirth and renewal. And hopefully we are coming out of our little retreat, our withdrawal from the world, our isolation, social isolation, having had time to look at ourselves and look at what we do, and maybe make some major changes in how we function. And that's the renewal. And I think this is definitely a special spring in that respect. Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, like we've done a year now of you know, go in the cave and think about it. And now we're coming out. And how do we want to be different? And we have so many choices. And so, you know, our tendency, of course, is to say, well, we want things to get back to normal. And then I think after that reaction, a lot of us think, well, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to get back to where we were. We want to move on to something better. And having made use of this seclusion and this time of introspection and yeah, and so there's an invitation. Change things. You know, if you don't like it, then that's okay. Change it again. You know, but try something different. You know what will happen from what you were doing before. If that's fine with you, okay, go back to that. But if you think, well, yeah, things should, you know, something should improve here, then try something different and try it for a while. And then if you don't like it, try something else. But we should, if we can come out of this, this year, you know, hit the ground running with, okay, It doesn't have to be the same way it always was. It's not true that just because people have been doing this for hundreds of years that we have to keep doing it. That's not true. You know, someone says, well, we've had wars for as long as we can remember. Well, that doesn't mean we have to keep doing it. We don't really have to do that. So we have choices, but they won't really happen unless we make the choice and use it and move in a different direction. And that can be exhilarating. So that's the invitation. And I guess we can stop with that. Unless you're going to say something, Linda? You're lit up. Okay. Well, Carol, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's great.
Wow. Yes. What a wonderful time together in our satsang. Thank you for the questions and for your participation, whether you were verbal or not. As always, and for some of you that are new, I'll let you know that we, thanks to Arabella and David, we are able to post these recordings on our YouTube channel, Dancing Shiva Tantra YouTube channel. And so you can review tonight's offering, or you can review the whole year of offerings that we've been doing. So yeah. And then for next week, we will be doing a meditation. The topic will come out in the announcement. And if you are new to us in any way, and you're wanting to be in connection with us, you can send an email to dancingshivatantra@gmail.com, and you'll be on our contact list and get information on all of our offerings and perhaps a newsletter in the future. So you can, thank you once again for being here. You can unmute and we'll all say good night and happy spring.
Good night, everyone. Many blessings.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Beautiful.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Arabella.
Hi,
Arabella.
Bye.
bye.
Thanks, Arabella.
Carol.